Welcome to RWA on XDC, where we teach you about the intersection of real-world assets and blockchain technology. Today's episode is about Data Oracle RWA Integration, feature and plugin. Today's guest, Ronald Mitchell. Welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thank you, Josh. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm a big fan of your podcast, so it's an honor to represent Plugin and be here this afternoon.
All right, I appreciate that. So, to start this episode, let's go into a background of Plugin and what you guys are offering in the industry.
Yeah, sure. So, just to kind of start, let's just talk about what, Plugin offers as an Oracle solution. So, an Oracle is a bridge to bring data from the outside world on chain, right? So, blockchain in itself is a immutable ledger that's blocks and data and code and that sort of thing, right? So, you don't have prices and data and feeds and all that stuff on blockchain. It has to be bridged in using an Oracle. So, Plugin, from a real world asset standpoint, all we need to do is figure out what a particular real world asset integration platform is looking for their data feeds, and then we set up that data relay and bridge that onto the blockchain for them.
Okay, so is that data captured on chain, or is it a third-party service that integrates the data?
Yeah, so it's not captured on chain. There's no data that's on chain. It's brought from outside, and it is a third party who is producing that data. We plug into that third party and then bridge that data on chain.
Okay. So what types of data would Plugin bring for their customers?
Geez, we got price feeds that we all know of. You could bring in asset information, regulatory compliance, legal data, interest rates, ESG data, asset performance metrics, event triggers. If you can think of it, then there's a data source in this real world already, and all we have to do is plug into that and then bring that information over.
Okay. So when you think of pricing data for different blockchains, different exchanges, when the data is incorporated into the plugin oracles, it cannot be altered after that point?
That's correct. So an example of some different data feeds would be, if we got data from CoinMarketCap, CoinGecko, if we got price feeds from an exchange itself, those are all external, and then we bridge those on chain, right? So the way it works is we have over 1,000 nodes and over 15 validator nodes. And with our consensus mechanism, what happens is that we have multiple data ports that brings in the data. The consensus mechanism makes sure that it all jives together, and then it's brought on chain, right? So since blockchain is immutable, it's extremely important that the data that's brought on chain is reliable and truthful, right? So our consensus mechanism, pulls different feeds to make sure that they all match before it's sent on chain.
At this point in time, what do you see as the biggest use case for data that Plugin brings together?
So it's a little bit tricky question because you kind of have to, again, go deeper into the way that the oracles work. So if you went on chain, if you went on our website right now and you looked at the feeds that we offer, you may say like,
Yep.
oh gosh, well, like I don't see anything for the housing industry or, anything for ESG. Well, that's because we don't have any customers that need it at this point, right? But
Okay.
all our customer has to do is say, hey, you know, my protocol needs these particular data sets, and then we can go and find 4, 5, 6, depending on how many different data sets they want to pull from. We can go and get those and just plug them right in, and it's all good. So it's not a matter of like what we offer right now. It's a matter of
Okay.
what does the client want, and then we can create that. Whatever they need, we can create. It's just a matter of a client coming and saying like, this is what I want, right? Example, just we're all here like crypto, and so we know that there's price feeds going on right now. So
Yep.
an example I can tell you is like me as a trader, there's a particular exchange that I use, and I'm not going to say names right now, but like there's a particular exchange that I use. Well, if I was going to set up a bot to make trades for me, I would want
Yep.
a price feed from that exchange. I don't want CoinGecko's price because it's an aggregate average of 12 exchanges. I want the
Yep.
price from the exchange that I'm trading on because that's real world times for my trades, right? So for when I reach out to plug in, I'm not saying like, oh, I just want the price of XDC. I'm saying I need a price feed for this particular exchange only, and that's what I want to pay for, so
So from an end user perspective, you can make data set calls yourself.
no, we do not come up with
Okay.
any data set prices. It's all from third parties. We're simply
No,
the
I'm
bridge.
saying
We're the bridge.
as a trader, you can go to plugin and you can request specific data? Or does it have to be an organization?
Anybody could do it. I mean, if you're paying for the
Okay.
service, you're their client, right? I could be an individual
Right.
that asks for the service, and you're paying the same price as the company pays. So if I built a bot or a DApp that was trading and I wanted a specific price feed, I would just go to them and request that particular feed.
Is it more so a developer perspective than an end user and a trader that would use this type of service?
Yeah, more so I would say developer aspects. I mean, your typical trader's just going on an exchange and trading, if they're creating bots and whatnot, then they have some developer skills. So then I would call them developers. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have a
Now,
bot. So that was just
right,
an example, right? I'm
right, I got you.
I'm boomer trader that just uses whatever's on the exchange, right?
Okay. Now, when you look at the big picture for plugin, how do smart contracts play a role?
So the bridge, when we bring data from the outside, we bridge it to smart contracts, right?
Okay.
And so it could be that the data we bring triggers the smart contract, right? So
Okay.
from a RWA standpoint, let's say that we had ownership of a house that's being rented, and there's
Yep.
10 owners. Well, when the rent gets paid, that could be the data that's brought on chain, and then that triggers payment to be made on chain to all 10. It'd be like dividend distribution, all 10.
You could use the smart contract to distribute to all 10 owners of that property.
Correct.
Okay.
That's just an
That's
example
pretty
of
cool.
like the trigger mechanism. So the data comes on and triggers the smart contract to then distribute tokens or dividends or whatever it may be. Just an example of how.
Do you
the
have any
data-
other examples off top of your head that this type of infrastructure could be used for in the future? Maybe it's not used for it at this point, but something you could see it used for in the future.
Yeah, so like just using housing again, like if there's major events, catastrophic events. So like if there's a hurricane, that data would be brought in, sent over, and then that may trigger a smart contract to pause current rates and reevaluate rates or something like that.
Okay.
There's just like it's just so wild because in the crypto space we all think of oracles being price feeds, but when you say data, like data is a humongous word and it covers everything. Like if you can think of it, that's data that somebody has monetized and is pushing out, right? So
Right.
it's huge, and when it comes to real world assets, like we're just the tip of the iceberg on bringing things on chain. So the data that needs to be available is not even offered by anybody at this point because it takes the first customer before you create that data bridge, right? So
Okay. Let me stop you there. Speaking of new customers and new potential data feeds, I did the first interview with Comtech last week. Have you guys spoken to Comtech? Is there any synergies between the two to where you guys could bring that gold data set on chain and bring that into plug-in oracles for distribution in the future?
Yeah, so I can't speak on if the team has, talked to Comtech or not. I do know that
Okay.
they're all in the general area, and I'm sure that they
Okay.
speak in passing, right? All I can say on that is that if Comtech were to need gold pricing feeds, we could certainly arrange that within a 30-minute phone call and put the data feed together and have it available for them. It'd be no problem.
Okay. So now for the listeners, let's do a quick walkthrough of what that would look like bringing gold data feeds on chain.
So Comtech would reach out to us, tell us exactly, what they wanted. And when you say that, it comes to, it's a respect of, I'm so used to crypto, I apologize because I don't even know how
No, you're
gold,
good.
how like crypto has 18 decimals. I don't know how you break down gold, but
Yeah,
you know,
so the way that we spoke about that the other day on the other show, and he said with it being on chain, you have the ability to break it down 18 decibels because of the XDC blockchain. So you have the ability to fractionalize it down. I'm thinking more the data price feeds for gold prices around the world. So they get the most accurate data when it comes to pricing their gold reserves versus the tokens available.
yeah, so our clients tell us the specific value
Resources.
in which they get the feed. So when we find
Okay.
the price and we plug it in, the client has to tell us what's going to trigger. So if you'll
Okay.
forgive me, I'm going to use the 18 decimals again. Like
Yep.
if the price is $2,000 and 4 cents, but we break that 4 cents down into 18 decimals. So
Yep.
you, as a client, you could say, plug in, we want you to send us the price change for every change at the 5th decimal point. So
Okay.
6 through 18 could be moving like crazy in the background, and you're never getting a price update until the 5th
Okay.
decimal changes. And then the price feed automatically sends. They pay the fee for that price drop, and their system then updates. So it's all about price point, really, right? So if you want the price
Right.
on 17 decimals, you can get that. You just have to request it. But at 17 decimals, you may have 3,000 pulls every second or every
In
minute.
10
Like,
minutes, yeah, that'd be crazy,
know?
yeah. You'd pull a lot more data with that many decimal points involved, for sure.
Yeah, so it becomes costly for the client. So they're going to determine at what price or what decimal they want us to trigger a price feed to go to them.
To pull the data, I gotcha.
Right.
Okay, now another thing, XDC recently partnered with Razor. Does that have any implications on plugin in the Oracle network that you guys are building out?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think everybody, in the Oracle space as well as DeFi space or anywhere else, like good competition is healthy, right? Healthy competition is good competition. As an end user myself, I'm really thrilled that Razor came on board. I would love to see some other options because I'm a believer that, if I were going to be building a project on XDC, I would want to have options, right?
Yeah.
If plugin is the Oracle of XDC, then that would be my first choice. But like anything, if I go to the doctor, I want to get a second opinion. I want to get.
Right.
If I'm working with a contractor, I get 3 quotes, right? So I think it's great to have different oracles, so that projects can have different quotes to see. But it's not only about like who's the cheapest. It's a matter of how many data sets are available, right? So if you're offering XDC's price, but you're only pulling it from 3 different data sets, and I'm offering it, and I'm going to pull it from 10 different data sets, then you probably want to use mine because I have, different data sets to find the different pricings if they're out there.
More data available and a more fluid sequence of data versus the 3. Yeah.
It gives you more accuracy when you have more data sets
on a global scale. Yeah.
View. Yeah, right.
Now, you spoke about competition. When you look at something like ChainLeak on Ethereum versus plugin on XDC, does the transaction cost play a factor in what an end business would use for an Oracle partner?
So
when you look at the prices for a transaction on Ethereum are $20 to $30, $50 a piece versus a transaction on XDC where it's multiple zeros, not even a penny to run that transaction and pull that data. But if you're spending $50 every time to pull data on Ethereum, I feel like you're getting your head cracked.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I can just give you one example without naming a project that I spoke to and made an introduction, and they had a specific number of pulls per day from a certain amount of projects, and they just flat out said it's going to cost roughly $2,000 a month for this on Ethereum and right around $100 on XDC using plugin. So it's a significant price difference, because even if ChainLeak integrates XDC, I really don't have an answer on like how they bridge over
their data sets,
their data if they're an Ethereum,
based project.
XDC's EVM compatible, but you still have to bridge from one to the other, and that means sending an Ethereum base to the bridge to bridge it over to XDC. First of all, so like there's still that Ethereum cost involved, even though it's like
right.
So it's not cost effective. Like Go plugin is probably the most cost effective that there is.
Because another thing I was just thinking about when you were explaining that is, if you think about as a business, you would want the most consistent data. Where if you're using XDC, the cost per transaction is so low that it's not going to be a factor in determining your end result. Whereas if you are using Ethereum, or you have to bridge back and forth. So the way I look at it is, if you have to bridge back and forth, one, you have the cost per transaction to bridge back and forth between Ethereum and XDC Network. But then on top of that, you're not getting consistent data if you have to bridge back and forth. You're going to get a delay. There's either going to be a delay, or to save on your cost bridging back and forth, you may only do one transaction per day, one transaction per week. And that leaves a big gap in that data that would be available if you went straight on XDC Network.
I don't think the delay would be that much. I am not,
Kill me on that.
I'm not a tech guru.
Okay.
But it definitely would be slower, and it definitely would be more expensive. So when you look at the example I said, $2,000 versus $100,
yeah,
that's a 20x difference. So I could provide my clients, and when I say I don't mean plug-in. I mean whatever DApp is getting the data feeds, and the end user being the client. The DApp could provide the client 10 or 20 times more pulls of the data to be that much more accurate at a lower expense. So
okay,
from a price feed standpoint, your prices are going to stay more up to date because you could pull them every 3 seconds instead of every 15 seconds. So like on a DeFi protocol, when you have $100,000 on the line and you could get liquidated because the price drops, you every second counts. You don't want price feeds every 15 seconds. You want price feeds every 1 second. So, that DeFi protocol is going to want to have a cost-effective way to bridge over the data for those prices.
When you think about a new DApp or a new application or an end user who is testing out potential software, are there use cases for using plugin to pull data on a smaller scale? Say you only have 50 or 100 users who are testing out your application. Does it still make sense to use plugin versus another third-party Oracle to pull their data?
Yeah, so the DApp or the application, no matter how big or small or how many users that they have, in order to get the data on chain, they're going to have a bridge, an Oracle bridge to bring the data on chain, right? And going back to what we said earlier, that particular application, they can tell us they want a price feed once every 5 minutes because they're small and they only have 5 customers, and they can scale that to once every 3 minutes, once every 2 minutes. Like, the client determines how fast or how often they get their
how much data they pull.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter how big or small. What matters is their budget, and then based on their budget, they determine how often that they want these price feeds, right? And then, like, when you look at how much data or how little data from a real world asset standpoint, I mean, the data they need is the data they need, whether it's big or small. Like, whatever their application covers is going to require a certain data set. And then it's just a matter of, how fast they want those feeds coming every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, every hour. It may just be a trigger mechanism where if it reaches a certain point, it triggers and it sends over to them. But from a new application standpoint, I mean, we offer free data stuff for testnet on Apothem. So, you know, if they're just testing and they have 30 people in there and it's a new DeFi project and 30 people are just banging away on it, like they can plug into us on Apothem and we can throw those data feeds, no issue at all. Like full scale, whatever you need, because it's all free of charge on testnet.
Now, when you think about the future developments, do you have anything offhand for what you guys will be doing over the next 6 months to a year?
Yeah, at the same website, goplugin.co, we have a roadmap out that shows the different things that we're working on. But
Okay.
you know, from using an Oracle in the real world, the plugin labs team has been working on a handful of dApps over the last 2 years. I'd like to go over just a couple of them to give an example of, you know, the real world use case of oracles in that sense. That's not our normal crypto price feeds. So
Okay.
there's an application that Plugin Labs have been working on. It's called SkyClaim. It's basically a flight delay compensation plan. And
That sounds crazy.
the Oracle use for that is that, like we talked about the trigger mechanism earlier on the smart contract. So
Yeah.
you could basically go in and say, like, you know, hey, I'm traveling for business. I'm in a rush. If this flight is delayed, I'm gonna miss my meeting. Or, you know, if this flight is delayed, I'm gonna have to pay extra money to get an Uber where I just planned on walking, or whatever. Maybe you just don't want to be late, right? Or you just don't like
Right.
to be delayed. So you could go on here and say, like, okay, I want to pay X amount of dollars, and totally this is just example, but I'm gonna pay $15 to get a compensation plan of $100 if my flight is even 10 minutes late.
Okay.
And so airports monitor flights like nonstop. And you know, when you fly often, so when you fly, it says like this plane's leaving at 8:10 and it's going to arrive at 3:25. Well,
Yeah.
when it lands, it pops up on the screen, and that's external data feeds that can be put into a smart contract. So if you're supposed to land at 3:25 and you don't land until, you know, 15 minutes late, when that time goes in, if it's longer than what you paid for, that literally would trigger the smart contract to pay you the $100 compensation that you bought, right? So
That's really cool.
it's a compensation plan, but for us and the knowledge that we're used to, we would say it's more or less like an insurance, right? It's
Yeah.
not insurance, it's a compensation plan on smart contract, but we would know that as insurance. Like, I want to ensure that my flight's not delayed, right?
Yeah.
So that's one use case. Another use case, there's a platform called Crappie that's going to come out. So it monitors the environment. Okay, so it brings and pulls data feeds for like heat index, rain, wind, those sort of things. So a farmer could take out a crop loss compensation plan, and then, like, say there's a drought, there's no rain, super hot. Like, I'm originally from Texas, so like going 3 or 4 months without rain is what we're used to in the droughts in Texas. But
Right.
you know, so you get a crop loss compensation plan. God, that's a tongue twister. Crop loss
Yeah.
compensation plan, right? And then, so say there's a drought, my crops die because of the heat, then I go in, I enter the plan to say, like, hey, I want to try to make my claim. They literally pull up the weather data that they've been collecting and say, oh, yep, we see it hasn't rained in 5 months, so your crops probably burn up. And then literally it just triggers to pay me my compensation plan that, you know, whatever the amount that I paid for coverage for. But
How
that,
far out
that
are you guys with that right now?
From a development standpoint, it's pretty far along.
Okay.
But from a release standpoint, I don't really have the knowledge to say that.
To speak on the date, I gotcha.
Yeah, but I would think within this year, 2024, that'll probably be live.
Okay.
So one other example is EcoDrive, which I know you're gonna love this one. So EcoDrive, it more or less monitors the carbon footprint that your vehicle leaves. So
Okay.
if you drive in an eco-friendly mode, meaning that when the light turns green, you're not smashing the gas, or you're not smashing the gas to pass people because they drive too slow or whatever. You're just kind of creeping
Oh
along.
my
You're
goodness.
creeping along in eco mode all the time. Then you're leaving less of a carbon footprint than a driver such as myself, who's like smashing the gas, going full speed, full cheetah all the time. And
Most
then,
people drive eco-friendly like you spoke about, but that's not the type of driver I am. I'm going 75, 80 everywhere I go, and sometimes faster than that. So I'm a terrible example for eco-friendly, especially, see, I offset it with driving a Tesla. So I get my eco-friendly side from the
there you go.
Tesla itself, but the speed, I'm out of here. I'm gone.
There you
That's
go.
hilarious.
So yeah, so just another, real world use case of external data being brought on chain and integrated into a smart contract.
Okay. Now, is there anything else you feel we need to discuss that we haven't already discussed on the show today?
I mean, we've covered a lot. I think the most important thing is that, the users understand that just because they don't see a particular data offered doesn't mean that we can't get it, right?
It's not available, right?
Yeah, everything is available. We just need a client that wants it. I'll use an example of, a husband and wife with 3 children. Well, they may have 1 car, or they may have 2 cars because there's 2 adults. But if you have 3 kids, you're not going to go buy 3 cars because they're not even old enough to drive. Like, you're not going to
Right.
spend that money on the cars when they're not being used, right? So plug-in or any other Oracle isn't going to be providing all these different datas when there's not a client that needs it, right? So
Okay.
we just want everybody to understand that anything that's data, we can bring on chain. It's not a problem,
Okay.
and we've amped up our process that we can set up different data source pools, within a 24-hour period, in most cases, sometimes faster than that. We just need to know what the client wants, and then they need to provide the parameters that they're looking for. And by that kind of goes back to what we said earlier, like how many decimals did you want the prices, and how often do you
Yep.
want that? Do you want that every 5 minutes, every 1 minute, every 30 seconds? And at what decimal do you want it to trigger? So when the client tells us what they want and then they give the specific parameters, we can make that happen. For any, like, my whole life I heard
Any
like
type of data set.
data is the new gold, or data is the new oil. Like, everybody's
Yeah.
data harvesting these days, right? So somebody somewhere is offering to sell the data that you need to bring on chain. You just tell us what you need, and we will find it and be able to bring it on chain.
Okay, great. One more time, give them the website where they can learn more.
GoPlugin.co.
All right. This has been Data Oracle RWA Integration on the XDC Network, featuring Plugin. Thank you for being here, brother.